Chosen one, listen closely. This message found you for a divine reason. There are no coincidences in the life of one who walks with purpose. The presence of Jay in your life was never an accident, never a random event, never a mere emotional encounter. It was a carefully written chapter in your spiritual journey. You were meant to cross paths for a reason that goes far beyond human understanding. Whether they came with love or chaos, peace or pain, Jay was sent to awaken a part of your destiny that could not have been reached any other way. Every conversation, every silence, every wound, every spark, it was all divine choreography meant to reveal who you truly are. When the veil of comfort is lifted, you see chosen one. God does not waste encounters. He allows people to enter your life, not only for companionship, but for correction, revelation, and transformation. The J person was a mirror sent to reflect what still needed refining inside of you. They might have made you question yourself, doubt your strength, or even lose your peace for a while. But behind that pain was purpose. God used Jay as an instrument not to break you, but to break open something sacred within you. There are lessons that comfort can never teach. Sometimes it takes the storm of confusion to awaken the voice of discernment. You had to meet Jay to recognize your own power, to reclaim your spiritual sight, and to learn that not everyone who enters with light intentions carries light energy. Jay was a spiritual classroom, and though the lessons were painful, they were priceless. Every moment of confusion pushed you closer to clarity. Every heartbreak made your heart wiser. Every betrayal taught you how to guard your spirit without hardening it. God wanted you to see that. Why Jay entered your life at a specific time. Love without discernment leads to distraction, and attachment without alignment leads to spiritual depletion. The encounter with Jay was not to destroy you. It was to cleanse your path of illusions. You needed to see the difference between who feeds your growth and who drains your destiny. You had to learn that not every connection deserves continuation, and not every presence means permanence. Chosen one. The enemy often disguises himself in familiar faces. The J person may have looked like a blessing, but in truth, they were the test. God allowed it because He needed you to recognize the subtle difference between emotional comfort and spiritual connection. Sometimes what looks like love in the natural is actually a spiritual distraction sent to delay your divine timing. You were blinded by emotion for a moment, but God used that blindness to open your inner vision. He needed you to feel the pull of your lower self so that you could finally rise into your higher calling. Jay came to test your discernment, to measure your patience, and to expose what still held authority over your emotions. It is easy to see Jay as the cause of your pain, but you must go deeper. See them as a divine mirror, reflecting what you still needed to heal. Perhaps they triggered your abandonment wounds or mirrored a version of yourself you once were. Their words may have echoed old memories that you thought were buried. But the truth is, God allows familiar pain to resurface only when He intends to deliver you from it. You were not meant to repeat that pattern. You were meant to recognize it, to release it, and to rise above it. J wasn't punishment. J was revelation. Through them, God showed you your strength, your boundaries, and your worth. At first, you may have asked, why would God allow this? But understand this: destiny requires development, and development requires divine discomfort. J came into your life, not to destroy your faith, but to purify it. They were a vessel of awakening, disguised as disappointment. The confusion you felt was the spiritual clash between what you wanted and what your soul truly needed. J was the shaking that pushed you out of spiritual stagnation. Their absence forced you into God's presence. Their rejection redirected you to your reflection. What you saw as loss was actually the removal of illusion. God used J to bring you the hidden divine purpose behind their presence, back to yourself, the real you, the anointed you, the unshakable you. Chosen one. There are certain revelations that only come through heartbreak. You learn to hear God's voice in silence, to stand in solitude, and to love yourself without needing validation from another soul. A J taught you that peace is not found in people, it is found in purpose. When you stopped chasing what confused you, clarity found you. When you stopped holding on to what hurt, healing began to flow. The encounter with J awakened your spiritual eyes to see beyond appearance. You realize that not every smile is sincere, and not every promise is divine. God used J to strengthen your spiritual immunity, to teach you how to discern energy, not just words. The most powerful lesson J brought was understanding divine timing. They entered your life exactly when they needed to. Not a second early, not a moment late. Their exit was also divine, no matter how sudden it seemed. The universe does not make mistakes. It makes movements. When their season ended, it was God's signal that your elevation required separation. You had to release J so that the next phase of your destiny could unfold. The pain of their departure was the birth of your transformation. You learned that sometimes God closes doors not because you're unworthy, but because He's protecting your purpose. You may still feel traces of their energy at times. The memories, the what-ifs, the echoes of conversations that linger in your spirit. But understand this: those echoes are fading because you're healing. God is cleansing your heart so you can carry new light, not old shadows. J was never meant to be your forever. They were meant to be your awakening. Every tear you shed watered your growth. Every prayer you whispered strengthened your faith. Every sleepless night became an altar of surrender. You were being refined, not rejected. You were being positioned, not punished. Now, chosen one, you can look back and see what was once confusing now makes sense. You understand why you had to meet J, why you had to feel that pain, and why it had to unfold exactly the way it did. God was writing something through you. A story of spiritual evolution. You are no longer the same person who met J. You are wiser, stronger, and far more aware of who you are in the kingdom. The old version of you tolerated confusion. The new version of you commands clarity. The old version of you sought comfort. The new version walks in calling. J played their role perfectly. Lessons, J, came to teach your soul, because without them, you might have never stepped fully into your divine identity. And yet even now there's something sacred about your compassion. You don't hate J. You've grown beyond that. You understand that they too were being used by something greater. Even if they didn't realize it, you've learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing behavior. It's about releasing the hold that pain has over your spirit. You no longer carry resentment. You carry revelation. You've turned your heartbreak into holy ground. Where once there was confusion, now there is clarity. Where there was pain, now there is purpose. Where there was betrayal, now there is divine balance. J was the mirror God used to show you who you were and who you could become. They were the friction needed to spark your transformation. They were the storm that revealed your strength, the test that proved your faith, the door that led you back to divine alignment. Everything they did, every moment they shared, every emotion they stirred, all of it was divinely calculated to shape the chosen one standing here now. And even when you thought you lost everything through them, you actually gained yourself back. God used what you thought would destroy you to redefine you. You came out of that encounter not weaker but wiser, not broken but rebuilt, not empty but empowered. And deep down you now know that nothing that happens to a chosen one is ever accidental. Everything, even the presence of J, was a part of God's divine design. But chosen one, the story does not end here, because what comes after J is the most powerful transformation of your entire journey. Your purpose is shifting, your energy is rising, and heaven is preparing to show you why. The chapter had to unfold exactly as it did. Chosen one, now that you have seen the truth behind J, you must understand what their presence was preparing you for. They were the divine test before your elevation, the spiritual storm before your peace. God often allows a shaking before the settling. He lets what is not rooted in truth be removed, so that what is meant to remain can grow, unshakable. The connection with J was not a punishment, but a prophetic lesson. It was meant to cleanse your spirit from dependence on human approval and remind you that your worth comes only from the one who created you. Through the pain of their presence and the silence of their absence, you were trained to rely on divine strength rather than emotional comfort. Every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every moment of heartbreak became the sacred fire that purified your purpose. You did not lose yourself. You were being remade. The old version of you would have begged for clarity. The awakened version now walks with conviction. The old you chased answers. The new you trusts divine timing. J was the tool that carved you into a vessel of discernment, a soul. How God used J to awaken your true identity, that no longer falls for illusions but walks with insight. God used them to sharpen your spiritual senses, to show you how to recognize counterfeit connections, and to prepare your heart for divine partnerships that align with your purpose. You had to experience false energy to understand authentic energy. You had to feel manipulation to value truth. You had to see the darkness in another's intentions to fully appreciate the light in your own. The J encounter awakened your spiritual radar. Now you sense motives before words, energy before actions. You no longer rely solely on what people show. You feel what their spirit carries. That awareness is divine armor. It protects your peace and guards your destiny. What once wounded you now guides you. What once drained you now defines your discernment. Chosen one J may have thought they broke you, but they only exposed how unbreakable you are. What they took from you, God replaced with something far greater. Wisdom, clarity, and resilience. You carry scars, yes, but those scars are sacred. They are not symbols of weakness. They are marks of survival. They are proof that you endured a battle that was never meant to destroy you, but to define you. And now, the same spirit that once wept over what you lost now stands in gratitude for what you gained. You gained peace that can't be shaken, faith that can't be faked, and self-love that cannot be taken. Every soul chosen by God must go through a season of separation. J was your separation season. They were the bridge between who you were and who you were meant to become. The pain you felt was the price of elevation. The heartbreak was the release of the old self, and though it hurt, that divine detachment was necessary for your awakening. God could not elevate you while you were still attached to what was meant to expire. Sometimes He removes people not because they are evil, but because their presence limits your growth. J was part of your past frequency. You were destined to vibrate higher. The moment you stopped resisting the separation, your energy began to rise and heaven started to align new blessings in your path. But remember, this chosen one, healing is not forgetting. Healing is remembering with peace. The memories of J may still visit your thoughts, but they no longer have authority over your emotions. That's how you know you've healed. You can think of them without trembling, recall their name without pain, and thank God for the lesson without bitterness. That is freedom. That is spiritual maturity. You no longer ask, "Why did this happen to me?" Instead, you declare, "This happened for me." Every delay, every detour, every disappointment was part of divine direction. J was the mirror through which you saw your worth reflected in God's light rather than in another person's approval. God allowed you to walk through that valley not to humiliate you but to humble you into clarity. The pain was the preparation, spiritual transformation through loss. Before J, you may have trusted too easily, loved too blindly, or ignored your inner voice. But after J, you began to listen to that still small whisper within the voice of divine wisdom. You learned that love without boundaries is self-betrayal, that peace is too precious to be shared with confusion, and that silence is often the loudest form of strength. You learned that not everyone deserves access to your energy just because they desire your presence. The divine reason J entered your life was not to stay but to stir. They were meant to wake up the part of you that had been sleeping, the confident, grounded, spiritually aware part of you. Their role was temporary, but their impact was eternal. Sometimes, God sends a storm not to destroy your house, but to reveal what was weak within its walls. Jay exposed your cracks so that you could rebuild stronger. You emerged with faith reinforced, discernment heightened, and purpose clarified. The pain they caused became your greatest teacher. And now, chosen one, your energy carries authority. The same experiences that once broke your heart now empower your voice. You speak from wisdom, not wounds. You love from overflow, not emptiness. You see through souls instead of appearances. The divine has elevated you to a level where your peace is your compass and your intuition is your shield. You no longer chase connection. You attract alignment. You no longer need validation. You embody purpose. And all of this began the moment you met Jay. There will come a time when you'll thank God for that encounter. Not because of what you endured, but because of what it unlocked within you. Without that season of confusion, you wouldn't have discovered your clarity. Without that pain, you wouldn't have developed empathy. Without that betrayal, you wouldn't have learned boundaries. Jay was a catalyst for your transformation, a vessel used by heaven to guide you into your divine identity. What once seemed like a curse was in truth, a coded blessing wrapped in temporary chaos. Chosen one, you are not defined by what you lost through Jay. You are defined by what you became after Jay. You became aware. You became resilient. You became unshakably aligned with your purpose. The universe responds differently to you now because your energy has shifted. You are no longer vibrating at the level of pain, but at the frequency of power. The same experiences that once drained you now empower your discernment. You can walk into a room and instantly feel what's seeing Jay through the eyes of divine timing, real and what's not. That's not paranoia. That's prophetic sensitivity. That's the gift that came through the lesson. And now heaven is preparing you for connections that are pure, peaceful, and purposeful. The old cycles are closing and divine replacements are aligning. But these new blessings could not come until you learned the lesson Jay carried. Every soul who hurt you unintentionally helped you heal. Every rejection redirected you to the higher path God had designed. The divine reason Jay entered your life was so you could meet yourself again. Not the version shaped by pain, but the version refined by faith. You now understand that closure doesn't come from words. It comes from revelation. You don't need to hear, "I'm sorry," when you already know it was necessary. That's divine closure. That's peace that surpasses understanding. You've reached a point where you no longer look back with regret, but with reverence. You honor the lesson because it shaped your destiny. You honor the pain because it purified your heart. You honor Jay, not as the villain of your story, but as the catalyst of your transformation. This is what it means to be a chosen one, to take what was meant for harm and turn it into holy growth, to turn wounds into wisdom, to turn loss into light. Every chosen soul must pass through a Jay season before stepping into full anointing. It is the divine pattern of awakening. Pain opens the door to purpose. The moment you accepted the lesson, the cycle ended. What once confused you now empowers you. What once weakened you now reminds you how powerful you truly are. So, chosen one, walk forward with a peaceful heart. You, final revelation. It was never an accident. It was alignment. No longer need to replay the chapter or question the purpose of J. Their role has been fulfilled and your evolution has begun. You carry divine awareness now, an awakened spirit that sees through illusion and walks in alignment. You have outgrown confusion, outlived betrayal, and overcome spiritual fatigue. You are no longer waiting for healing. You have become it. Your energy restores, your words uplift, and your presence carries light. The divine reason J entered your life was so that you could rise into this your truest, purest, most powerful version. You were meant to experience temporary pain to access eternal wisdom. And though the process hurt, the result was holy. You now stand as the living proof that everything, even heartbreak, can be sacred when seen through divine eyes. Chosen one, breathe deeply now and feel it, that peace, that clarity, that strength within you. That's the evidence of transformation. That's what God was after all along. J was never an accident. They were the divine spark that ignited your awakening. And now the world will witness the light that pain could not extinguish. The reborn you, walking boldly in purpose, guided by divine wisdom, carrying the peace that only comes from understanding that every encounter, even the hardest one, was written in heaven before it ever touched your heart.